The world is changing rapidly, and a new paradigm of leadership is emerging. A way of leading with more heart and soul. And on this fifth season of the Vulnerable Power Show, we share the practical insights, leading edge skills, and potent wisdom to equip you for this future paradigm unfolding today. Learn from visionary leaders, spiritual entrepreneurs, innovative founders, all who have done the inner work and soul searching to transform and step up into their calling and mission, leading with their vulnerable power. These soulful and heartfelt deep dives will teach you how to develop self-mastery, step into your soul's calling, embrace your gifts and genius, and lead from a service-oriented mindset, so you too can be empowered to do this transformative inner work and step up as the ascending leader you came here to be. Together, let's bring more heart and soul back to leadership around the world. Greetings and welcome back to season 5 of the Vulnerable Power Show. Well underway. What a potent time we are living in, and I would have never thought that I was birthing something through. Almost like an invention is birthed through when the words Vulnerable Power Show dropped into my head. And today's guest, a very special guest, someone whose technology I used 5 years ago, that she's going to explain all about, that she's birthed through, as I word it, that she's brought into this reality for many years now. And Gail is going to come on today and share with us what it's like to be what I would call a new earth leader, somebody that's bringing through paradigm changing on the frontier of leading edge for this collective. And creating this stuff is not easy, especially nowadays. Then that is the intention for today's episode, so that you leaders listening and joining us can also do the same. So without further ado, I like to drop in with the proverbial hello, Gail. Thank you for being here and being willing to share what it's been like to birth through a literal egg.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. I was really looking forward to this. A little bit just nervous. There's so many energies going on the planet right now. There's so many emotions flying around. And I am just so excited to see humanity take the next step forward and be encouraged. There's a song, What Would I Do Today If I Were Brave? So I would ask everybody, what would you do today if you were brave? When I
Ooh.
birthed the egg, right? Isn't that good? When I birthed the egg, I literally had almost like a menstrual period for 6 months. And I've never had children, but this is my child. This is what I was birthing through for humanity. And I know my boyfriend at the time, he said, I think you should go to the doctor. I said, I'm birthing something. This is a natural way that my body's responding to this birthing process. And that's exactly what happened. I birthed this huge egg.
Hopefully it didn't literally come out of you. I mean, right out the gate, you're coming at this very multidimensionally, because I wanted to also preface when we actually met at this conference, this opportunity came about very, let's say, divinely orchestrated. And I saw you on the roster. So everybody listening, I mean, you're already speaking to what I'm about to say. You said that you were careful about how you deal with the technology and how you, are pristine, my word for it, a purist energetically, because this is an energetic extension of me, or as I'll put it, the creation is an energetic extension of the creator. And right there, explaining the multidimensional, somewhat paranormal nature that it takes on, literally having biological symptoms to mirror since you happen to be in female form. So I would say that's what really caught my attention and what I really wanted to start to unpack today and go to that originating point where you were, before it started to birth through, where you were like, this is something, because you're already speaking to it. And I love how you dived right in and presented the multidimensionalness of how it takes, what form it takes, because more and more this show, and I teach, or any whatever I'm talking about, I become that, right? I have to align with that. So why don't we start there in terms of what it's like to invent and found this kind of leading edge, or what we would call new earth technologies today. Take us back to the proverbial inception before all of the literal biological paranormal symptoms, those later stages, which we'll get to in the chronology. What's it like at the early stages, or what I call downloading? What did it start as? What were the inceptions of this birthing like? If you can go back there and kind of unpack, and we'll riff from there.
I think it started when I was 37 years old and found I'm 55 now, and I found that I had a lot of illnesses, a lot of things going on that I was looking for answers for. Well, I found a mentor, and this mentor had created a healing chamber, we'll just call it. And I looked up to him, and I thought, this is who I need to learn from. This is who is my teacher. And I watched the greed, and I watched the corruption, and I watched him with a beautiful, beautiful gift of medical intuitiveness abuse it. And I watched the community that he created was afraid of each other. Oh, I can't talk to that person that owns that center because they might steal something from me. And that energy came through. So I knew that I needed to create something a little different. And I know that people would feel his energy in this machine, and it was creepy. And I don't feel like I'm worthy, and every day I'm not worthy. And if I make a mistake, I beat myself up. We were talking about judging ourselves, because I'm bringing something through that is not from me, it's through me, that I wanted for humanity to create community and cooperation and abundance for more people, abundance of health and wealth. And I know that when this comes through, it is a huge responsibility. And we should all be discerning when we're looking at technologies and we're looking at products we're putting into our bodies, because they're the extension of the energy of the person that created it, the company that's touching it. Everything is energy. And I want people to feel like they are invited into this womb space where this crazy girl named Gail Lynn, that's the soul being, created this womb space for people to heal in. It helped me, and it helps people to connect to their higher self, to live in love, to know that we're all divinely connected, and that we're all here to learn lessons together, to learn from each other. So this gentleman created this company that there was no training manual, there was no support. It was like, take the money and run. So thankful for him, and so grateful that I had that experience. So I created an organization where we are all in community. We have a private Facebook page. We talk to each other. We have monthly meetings where it's a video call with myself and all the center owners. It's a divine feminine business model, which I think that the age of Aquarius, we're there. And people really need to understand that it's all energy. And what do you feel? If you feel a sick feeling when you walk into a room of a machine or a technology or modality, then really rethink and honor yourself. Don't put your body through that, because you're just going to have to undo all that energy afterwards.
Hmm.
There's different kinds of technologies. Go ahead.
Let me pause you here. So, a couple of things. And I love all this. So, have you always been this way? In other words, when you were younger, did you ever feel this sense of, I'm here to do something? There's a mission I have, or soul's calling, as I call it. Because it sounds like there's two things I'm hearing. A lot of beautiful stuff already presented. The wording I used, energetic purist. What we're going to get into in terms of synthetic, natural technologies, and we'll probably geek out a lot on that stuff, which you're already presenting from your own personal experience in terms of your mission, how, the harmonic egg, which we're going to lead up to, that you've birthed through what it's called now, the device itself. Did you have this? I mean, what, or did it come about later in life? If you were to speak about this, I'm here to do something, this vibe.
It's a great question. I think I was born in fight or flight. My mom allegedly had been with someone else before my dad came back from Vietnam. And so I grew up in a womb space of someone who felt really guilty. After my dad came back from Vietnam, this gentleman apparently said, I don't want kids. My mom was pregnant. So she said, oh, this is your daughter, this person. It's the only dad I've ever known. They're both passed away now. And so I'll never know the real truth, but intuitively I know that I'm 2 inches taller than my entire family. I have a different body type I don't look like my mom. I didn't look like my dad. It's just kind of obvious. But I think I grew up in that space, being born in fight or flight. My mom didn't really want me, so we had a lot of problems. And I went to a psychic and said, how do I get rid of this person for the rest of my life? I hate her. I absolutely hate her. And my dad was an alcoholic. My mom was a control freak, maybe narcissistic sociopath. And the healer said, you keep coming back with these same souls over and over again. You're not learning the lesson. And I thought, well, tell me what I need to do so I never ever have to see them again, ever, my entire soul existence. And he says, put up a picture of your mom and look at that picture every day and tell her you love her. I said, I can't do that. I was in my 20s, can't do it. And he said, well, that's the only way that you're going to fix this. So I said, well, then I'm going to do it. I'm absolutely going to do it. And in those experiences, it fixed everything. So I would encourage everybody. This is such a beautiful thing to do because you can heal energy
Hmm.
on your own. You can heal that energy. I told her every day that I loved her in the picture. By the time she passed away, I have an email from her that says, you're my best friend. I would be honored to come back and experience a soul life with her again. And
Hmm.
I couldn't even think that way back when I had that psychic reading. Sorry, I'll tear up here.
No, this we're in vulnerable power territory. I'm the one that
Oh,
tears up
good.
more than the guest, so we're gonna both be tearing up. Take your
So
time.
I miss my mom. I love my mom. I have a better relationship with her now that she's passed. There's a different energy about it. So I think I was always very empathetic. I was
Hmm.
always very, but I also had a lot of vulnerabilities
Hmm.
because I was always trying to please my mom, not knowing why she hated me, why she was jealous of me, why this was all happening, why did I choose this life, why did I choose these parents. And over the years, this is everything always shows up for me for the lesson. And I just say yes. I mean, yes, I'm stubborn, but I say yes to get through. Why do I have to have this experience? Why am I attracting this? And so it's beautiful. You're laughing. I'm going to
Well,
give you
well,
hugs.
you're confirming what I told you when I first met you. I'm laughing with your higher self sitting over here, as Alan Watts said. I'm throwing a surprise party with your higher self, and you're gonna be surprised. So I'm laughing with your higher self. In that sense, I oftentimes guess if you're new to the show, the sacred work, it's not serious, and you're diving into what we're already riffing and getting into some of the stuff I was hoping to unpack. And so we'll intermingle it. I'm a very serial processor, so I love this because you're speaking to very deep healing that you've done. And what you were talking about that made me chuckle was when I met you, I said, sounds like you're an ascended master. Now, if you're new to any of this terminology, it's new in the new age. There's a lot of diluted stuff out there. We're going to get into some really advanced stuff in terms of this technology. Gail's talking about vibrational medicine, energy medicine, womb space, sacred womb healing, divine feminine and masculine. When I met you, I said to you, an ascended master is an advanced soul that chooses to take it on so quickly. And that's why I chuckled because I was like, you're literally speaking to that. Because when we spoke and I said, hey, does it resonate? Come on the show. I know you're more established and you've been on bigger podcasts, so to speak. This notion of you were like, Haas, yes, I want to talk to inventors out there that they need to tune. I mean, these are your words. And I was sitting there like, wow, I mean, you really are the real deal, which is, again, off of that statement that you're elaborating so much that the creation is an extension of me. I want that responsibility. This is a big deal, folks. I'm responsible for people. I get it. What you learn from this creepy, corrupted teacher that have learnings from. He said, I need to tune into my higher self. Shadow and inner child healing, Haas. I needed to do that. I need to harmonize my polarities of my masculine and feminine. Stuff that I do professionally. We talk about on the show. And you are literally saying, Haas, and you're speaking to it right now. And I appreciate your candor and for sharing that, Haas, no, I actually had to go through it this way. It's fascinating because have you ever heard the black sheep terminology? It sounds like me, you were a black sheep, and that goes to ancestral healing and some of the work you had to do. And tell us again, because it sounded like a very potent. I've done it in a different way with my inner child. What did you do to do the healing with your mother exactly? What was it? You said you did what with the picture? Can you share that again with the audience in terms of like step by step or It sounds like a technique, in other words.
This is a technique. Basically, you put a picture of that person you're trying to heal that soul contract with or that energy with, and you just send energy of love and tell, I would say out loud, I love you, mom. And I watched the energy shift with her. I watched our conversations change. And I was able to heal it with my dad too. For my dad, being an alcoholic with a seventh grade
Mm,
education, I didn't understand him, but I wanted to understand him. So one day I just pulled him aside. I mean, he would wake me up at night, I'm going to commit suicide. I was his
mm,
rock. I tell your mom this, and then my mom would say, tell your dad that. I was the oldest of three. And
mm,
so my dad's relationship and mine was a little bit different. I pulled him aside one day. I said, Dad, why did you drink? Because he ended up quitting. And the only thing that made him quit was a public humiliation. It wasn't that we told him to quit. It was something that happened publicly, and the neighbors saw it, and they called the police, and that made him go into rehab and quit. So he said, "Well, I if you knew who I was and the inventor that I am, my dad was a lot like that. Even though I don't know that it was my real dad, that's who I know as my dad. He was very creative. He would fix all the bicycles for the kids in the neighborhood, the lawnmowers for the neighbors, the snow blowers. He could fix anything. He had the most common sense of anybody that I've ever met. If you were to smack him in the face, he would turn the other cheek and say, hit me back. So people thought he was kind of sissy-ish, but he
mm,
wasn't. He
mm,
wasn't that at all. And we won't get into all those stories. I said, why did you drink? He said, well, I had to have a job that a seventh grade educated person could have. So he worked on the assembly line, and he put the same bolt on
mm,
the same car every day after day for 30 years. For a creative type, that's torture.
mm,
But he said, I had to take care of three children and a wife. So I said, why did you come home and drink? He said, I thought I was doing good. I didn't go to the bar and spend all of my paycheck. I came home. He would come home with a jumbo, they call it, wrapped in a paper bag. And that's what he would get drunk. But he thought he was doing great by his family by coming home to drink instead of going out to the bars and spending all the money. And when he went to Vietnam, he said he didn't want to go, but this is when I really knew who he was.
mm.
He what was he, probably 16, 17 years old? You know, he's a young person. He said if I would have dodged the draft or done something to avoid going, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself not knowing if somebody else went in my place if they died.
Wow.
He was that self-aware at a young age. So the only way he could get through life was to go numb and drink.
Hmm. It's
So
interesting. I didn't know that
understanding,
about you. So I have similar upbringing in terms of my parents' vibration, education, and obviously they're immigrants with different ethnicity. So it sounds like similar to me. You came from that, let's say, a lot of pain, a lot of different stuff, inherited ancestral healing, this stuff that now in science is very hot, these concepts of epigenetics, how we inherit this stuff. So if I'm hearing you, it sounds like the impetus in terms of a lot of this is many people know, and regulars will know if they're on the show, and definitely this as a leader and you're speaking to it. This shaped you. And it sounds like the pain is part of what shaped you, promulgating what they proverbially say to bring pearls from the pain. Because everything I'm hearing is the suffering, similar to me, right? These sufferings, and we become the black sheep to kind of shift that. So it sounds like that really was a lot of curriculum early on in your life, and that I'm really grateful that you're sharing it because oftentimes we don't see what you're sharing, the connections, and that's what we're speaking to as we're talking about it is how these connections then brought Gail to what is the now and how they created this sense of responsibility. Because correct me if I'm wrong, I know this for myself by seeing their agony and wanting to shift that intergenerational wound. It gave me a like it fueled me. It was part of the mission. It was this notion of like, yeah, I could resist this energy, it'll persist, or I can do something about this. So it sounds like by seeing this, making peace with your mom, doing all this, bravo, all this very advanced healing inner work, it sounds like you brought compassion, grace, and then you were able to do the real work, which is do something with this, shift the energy. Does that more or less encapsulate it? So when,
absolutely.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, the thing of it is too, so I didn't heal myself. I was working on healing everybody else. So until I got to a place of my 30s did I realize I have to go back now and heal that inner child who took care of everybody else when she was supposed to be taken care of. So I went in on a 3 day inner child healing journey with dolphins and shamans and cried because I saw that little girl who didn't trust the adult that I was, even though I was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, didn't trust that inner child. And I had to go back and heal that inner child to get to where I am today. So sometimes I walk around and see people's energy and I say, well, they're still emotionally 12, they're still emotionally 8, they're still emotionally 7, because you can dig back into that and find out that, oh, at 7 years old, my parents went through a divorce. Well, you kind of got stuck there emotionally, and it is your responsibility to go back and heal that inner child. And that's what we all need to do, because we have a lot of adults walking around and they're just children in adult bodies. And that's why we respond to things the way that we do. And it seems very childish because that inner child is still so hurt and it was never healed. And we have to do that. We have to do that work.
I would say we're back to this notion of if you're birthing it through, right? It's just the premise of the mechanics here of what we're talking about today on this co-creation or this episode. This notion of if you're birthing it through, because you brought a very good contrast out where it's almost like the A/B test. You're the let's say a good example of a practitioner or somebody who's inventing or founding and an entrepreneur birthing it through. Your teacher is a good example because my thesis is there are no bad people. We have to transcend this. They're hurt people that mean well. And so, as my Yiddish friends say, you want to really test the person's character, give them money, alcohol, or I think it's sleep deprivation. And the premise is you really see a test of somebody's character. I'd venture to say that that teacher with the what you called corrupted technology, or I think you said the technology they had was creepy, God bless them, that's somebody that hasn't done the inner work. So if you're listening, you're new to any of this stuff, or you've never joined the show before, there's an episode at the end of this season, Marcia, which will be coming out after this, which is all about the work we're talking about that Gail had to do to get aligned and pristine enough so that when she bursts this stuff through, it's not jaded, so to speak. It doesn't have all the problems we've been dealing with, because the underlying premise of what we're going to get into more and more today is that if it's new earth, it can't have old wounds, old fingerprints in the hair. So I love how much you're unpacking already, touching some highlights of all this inner work you've had to do to get back to this notion of responsibility, right? What you talked about, we're going to get into more and more. When did you know it was going to be the egg? In other words, like I remember the day I was on the mountain and I got the words vulnerable power, the actual semen for the proverbial ideation, or what I call the codex, the actual boop, it drops in from the higher consciousness, super consciousness, whatever words, resonate. When do you remember that moment for you in terms of the ideation of it? When was that seed dropped in? Where were you? And then take us from there. How did you develop that? Because people are going to be joining us from different stages of their invention journey or their ideation journey. Let's go as far back. So we've got a lot of contrast here. Teacher did it the wrong way. You chose to experience that. A lot of inner healing, accelerated curriculum, beautiful. So then take us back to the inventing. When did you get the seedling? And take us from there. Let's keep unpacking that.
When I became aware, it made me laugh because then I can go back to I needed the engineering automotive background. I needed to move to Texas and have international business experience and travel to Egypt and travel all over the world because I brought other energies in. And I needed to be in Hollywood because I needed to be that extemporaneous, not shy to be in front of a camera. So that didn't come through. But then when I look back and all the puzzle pieces and how the universe had this planned already, when it really came through was a lot of people were telling me they were experiencing great healing in this light box, but it was really just physical. There wasn't a lot of emotional or spiritual. And like you said, this person didn't do their work. So the intention was the energy of this inventor. And I thought if we do something, there was a level of discomfort in there. There was a lot of things that the clients were telling me. I ran a center with two of these for a long time. And then one day I started to see this picture of an egg. And I just thought it was very strange because I didn't know why. I didn't know this was going to be a healing chamber. I just saw a picture of an egg. And then I started seeing eggs everywhere. So you have to pay attention to the signs. And everybody knows this, but if you're walking around on the planet numb, you're not paying attention to the signs because you're not seeing those signs.
I love that.
Then yeah, you got to pay attention to the signs. You see 444, you see angel numbers, you see different things all over, and you have to pay attention. I saw a fox the other day during the day. I ran home, looked at my animal spirit guide. What was the fox trying to give me the message for? So we have to pay attention to the signs. So I started seeing eggs everywhere. And then I put two and two together and I got four. And I said, this is what the new chamber is going to look like. It's going to be an egg shape. An egg is very powerful. Work with the cosmic egg and these different things. And you say, okay, there's a good energy inside of an egg. It's where life comes from. And then I started looking at my childhood and how I came out and had to heal all those inner things. So that's what the egg does. It takes you back and heals that childhood trauma. And you can still have the experience where you still say, that happened to me, but that does not define me. I am not going to let that put limitations on me because I was molested, I was raped, I had a miscarriage, I had this or that. That's what we have to fuel us to teach, to heal that for ourselves, and then we can teach others. We can help and support others as our human brothers and sisters. So the egg started coming through, and then I was shown it has to be natural wood, no crystals that hold information, no water that holds information. There's a lot of products out there that energies are held in the water or the crystals. And unless you have a really good healer that knows how to clear that, or you can drain all the water out of the float tank and replenish it for every single person, water holds information. Our bodies are water. Our cells hold information. And I wanted something that was pure. And then I had to think about the music, because you can have a musician who is in a very bad space, and then their energy, that their bad space can transfer to the client. And so I wanted to make sure that there's purity in the musicians of the music that goes into the egg as well. So it was like the Taj Mahal. This tile goes here, and this tile, there's so much intention of every piece, every panel, the golden ratio, the sacred geometry, the hexagon platform, which I now have been taught that it's such a powerful shape and can act as a portal. And that's where the chair sits. So you're in there and you feel this energy of just releasing and not defining you, and you feel free and you feel no limitations. But then when you come out, you have to do the work. There's so many people that say, I just want a magic egg, just like they want a magic pill. That's not going to happen. You have to do the work. And I can't want the healing more than you want it for yourself. So you have to want
Mm, I love that. Okay, so much already there. And thank you for breaking it down. I know it's always interesting, right? Going back, because similar when you started to explain, well, Haas, if I were to actually look back, it started before the insemination of the original codex, which you put as the picture of an egg came in, and you're like, what? Similar to me, as I've said on the show, vulnerable power was similarly, right? You go back and you connect the dots. So I love this because it comes out on this last episode we'll have this season of doing the inner work, where paying attention. I love how you touched on that, because it seems like the first step is you start to bring awareness, which is vital in this inner work that we're speaking to on today's episode as the I love that. The medicine, right? The healer has to heal thyself, because you're dispensing. How can you heal them if you haven't healed yourself? So you've highlighted so well all of that. So then you're paying attention to the signs. You're paying attention to the download. And obviously, as you highlighted, you've done enough of the inner work, which helps you pay attention. Then it seems like you took action on what you were getting. And then it sounds like the flow kept going from there, because then you started to say, which we're going to get more into as much as we can with the time today, the vibrational medicine that you're already peppering in for the sake of everybody in the audience. Some that will be like, what are you? Because there's so many dimensions that it seems like once you did this, then they're like, do this. And the they being your super consciousness, your higher self, where these downloads were starting to come from, correct? I mean, it seems like me and like everybody, there's a universality. Boop. And then human Gail goes, picture of an egg. What does this mean? Oh, let me pay more attention. Follow these. Then as you take steps, because what I found, I don't know if this matches. If you back up, if you cue, or if you don't take action, you won't get the new stuff. So, in other words, it's almost like the universe, your higher consciousness, the flow of inspiration pauses. So, it seems like you did act on it. Is that accurate? Is that in looking back mechanically? I love that. And then the pure
Yeah.
intention, which I would say keeps coming back in everything you say. And I love how you're wording it because you ended it with on where you were flowing. This is a tool in complement to the work. Because when I went to the egg, so I found Gail's technology 5 years ago by happenstance. And it was a lawyer on my LinkedIn feed who is like into wellness now. It's all the rage with all the evidence showing that this stuff not only does it work, Gail's work was leading edge. And the owner happened to know my brother. I mean, there's so much fortuitousness. So when I met Gail this year, 5 years later, I was like, oh my God, I was, like a groupie. Oh my God, you're the founder of the egg. So when I went into your device, you've never heard this, so I'll share it live, and that's what I've been saving so you can get the benefit of it live as the audience will. I literally was knee deep in soul trauma healing, stuff that you're speaking, you've done on yourself, all sorts of aspects of the interdimensionality, the multidimensionality of our nature and inner child. And I knew I had a wound from Egypt of being killed for being too creepy and corrupt. Words that you spoke of earlier about your teacher. And I went into the device knowing this thing is not going to heal me. It's going to support my healing journey. And I love what you said at the end that I've come to learn as a practitioner. I can't care more about your well being than you do. And everybody in this day and age, I love how much you've peppered in throughout the time already together that we've opened up so much goodness because everybody's looking for that quick fix. And so your device that we're going to unpack the medicine of it, the dimensions and how, so as much time as we can into it, because I'm curious about how you devise some of the stuff you've already broken down. Anything else in terms of this step by step? The pure intention seems to have been the guiding step of how you then birthed it through. Speaking only to the birthing through part of it.
So I think focus. People don't understand to focus. And I think that's a really important thing that I want to bring up. I have friends who say, I have 110 inventions. I said, how many have you done? Zero. I have another friend in Texas, and he's got all these dreams of grandiose to do all these different things. He's now 85 years old and he hasn't done them because he has no focus. So I used to do executive coaching and CEO consulting. And I try to tell him you have to focus. And so that was a main thing. I couldn't have, you know, built this business and created this product while I was doing 16 other things. There's that focus that you have to have. You laugh, so you have to
Well,
focus.
I
So
suck
I
at
can't wait
this.
to
The
hear.
other day when you told me Haas, I found out on the disc, I use Myers-Briggs often. I've been training quite a few of these psychometrics. I didn't know you were a coach, by the way. Interesting tidbit there. Always get surprised by the guests. If you don't know, we do this inspired. We have some conversations. We have a flow outline. It's very improvised. We riff, and I'm like half the time like, well, I didn't know that. It's fascinating because like you, so when you said the disc thing and you said your high D, I struggle with focus. It's actually one of my intentions for this year. It's oftentimes, you spoke about pulling oracle cards, one of these tools you use to understand the consciousness. In the episode with Marsha I've referenced, we get into an exercise that she guides me into altered state work through symbols. I didn't say this, and you won't hear it on that last episode. I'll say it now. I love what you're bringing out because I chuckle because I keep getting focus in these oracle cards. And I love how you brought up oracle cards. You ran home, you saw Fox. What does it mean? Or you pull something, or you're starting to understand and appreciate as a healer your multidimensionality and understand that the universe doesn't speak to us in language. It speaks to us in constructs, in colors, in symbols, or in something you know very well, sacred geometry and sacred math, right? Which is behind the device that you've created, so to speak. So I love how much of all of this you've packed. So I chuckled because that's one of the things I need to work on because I love that. And I added it to the formula because you're right. Not only did you bring out, you have to prioritize. It is an egg. Not your invention will happen to be an egg. It is for anybody. It's something that you're gestating and bringing through. You're the instrument, as I put it, right? You're the antenna. So I love how you are speaking to that because some people don't ever take the time to focus, to gestate it through. Mine has been shiny ball syndrome. I don't have a high D like you on disc. I'm high I, high C. So I'm constantly trying to help people and create solutions. So I chuckled because I would say the other element of focus which is that you have to see it through. I kind of spoke to it in terms of how you implicitly, I picked up, you took action, you brought out the element. The variable focus was what allowed you to stay the course because I feel like both you need to prioritize and make focus to gestate and follow through. And in the case you brought up, people have ideas and they don't act on them. And as we're going to get into the synthetic stuff, there's a lot of, let's say, energies around us that systemically don't want. There's almost a resistance energy of, that stops us. Did you deal with anything like that? Let's get into some stuff I was going to bring up anyways. We're flowing and riffing here. What was it like, Goenke, the founder of Vipassana, when you finished his silent retreat? He says, you've planted something here. So here we're back to birthing, planting, sprouting. And this sprout, he says, is going to get attacked by these proverbial enemies within you. Doubt, tire. What were those enemies? And I don't want to give any names. Like, did you face any resistances outside or within you? What was that like? Because I think that's a natural progression from the focus. How did you retain your focus with all that happening? And what happened and how did you retain it?
Amazing question. Okay, so one is money, the energy of money. How am I going to do this? And there was definitely a lot of doubt because people, one manufacturer I went to, I asked if this could be done, and they said no, it's impossible. Well, Walt Disney said if you can dream it, you can do it. So I was like, okay, to heck with you. I dreamt it. I'm doing it. Get the hell out of my way, right? So, but then there's that energy of money. And I had so many people, if you know Daniel Brinkley and in his book and how he downloaded some things around 1996, 97, that's when my teacher downloaded the same exact information. But what he did with it and what Daniel did with it were two different things. And I had so many people tell me, I had this vision of an egg. I had this 10 years ago. Well, sorry, but you didn't do anything with it. You didn't take any action. I would have people in the egg with, you could hear the tape measure, and they were writing things down, measuring what I did. It's, the story. And it's like you didn't do anything with it. You didn't focus. You didn't take action. But money is an energy that blocks so many things. And this is a funny story because I didn't have the money to build a prototype of the egg. I had dealt with investors in Hollywood, and they didn't really want to have that energy unless they were silent investors. And so I said, okay, a universe, God, source, whatever word is used, how am I going to do this? We're ready to take action. I am ready to focus. I am ready to serve humanity, but show me the way. The funniest thing is it was through a car accident. Now, I'm stubborn, so you know that this is just my stubbornness I felt like my guides at that moment in that intersection were saying she's just not getting it. So we have to do this to her. And I was hit at 60 miles an hour. A girl who just turned 16 ran through a red light. We have these LED lights now in Colorado, and they don't really get hot. So when the snow hits them, they're packed with snow. You don't know if it's red, yellow, or green. You need to yield. But when you're 16 years old, you're like, okay, I don't see if it's red, yellow, or green. So I'm just going to keep going. Clearly, my light was green. I went smack. So I felt like at that time, my guides were like, we're just going to hit her. She's going to be fine, but we're going to hit her. Spun around the intersection. Don't remember much. Feels like the cops were there in like 2 seconds, but I guess it was about 10, 12 minutes. A gentleman had opened my side door, and he said, I just want to make sure you're okay. I'm here to be a witness because I saw that what happened. It was her fault, but I got to go. And I said to him, oh my God, so nice to see you. I'm so glad to see you. He thought I was absolutely crazy. But at that moment, with that NDE, if you want to say it's a near-death experience, I felt like everything was beautiful. I knew everybody. I knew everything. It was just this beautiful expression. I later called him and apologized. He said I freaked him out because I don't know him and he didn't know me, but I treated him like he was my brother. So I learned also that when you can hit a trauma within a few hours, 6 or 8 hours, the body and the cells can't remember the trauma. So of course I did my healing work, but the insurance company called me up and said, we have to do a settlement with you. And I said, I'm not suing anybody. That's not how I roll. No, no, no. It was our driver's fault. We have to do a settlement. It was the exact amount of money I needed to build the prototype.
Now you didn't know this. We have an episode this season about money and financial freedom with a buddy Matt Rinke. So you all get the benefit of something that Gail's brought up and so many dimensions to this understanding the energy of money. Because it sounds like you had to overcome scarcity, doubt in terms of it, the value creation, and then here again highlighting the, let's say, if you choose to embrace it and understand that there's a soul, it's guiding, we choose, there's a responsibility that I've chosen. It's like almost like a radical acceptance perspective if you're new to any of this. And it's like, I've chosen all of this. So I love this because it's very much a well-known thing in this, let's say, spiritual community, in this new age community. It's not really new age, it's old stuff that's being revived and remembered. That the universe is conspiring to serve us. And I've heard quite a few accounts, including my own Reiki master teacher, saying similar stuff. I personally haven't experienced that much cool stuff in the money department because I've had to heal so much money wounds around it, stuff we talk about with Matt on that episode this season. So I love that because I would say 1,000,000% you see that a lot. And I love how you wove that in, that it was a very heinous trauma that almost took your life that has this weird, I am actually going to be doing this to wake myself up and give myself the shit ton of money I need to go create the prototype. I mean, again, human us only in hindsight, as they say, is 2020. So let's jump into that. You were not always woo-woo. You were not always designed to be this way, I take it, right? You're born in this culture, you're American. I mean, what point, and jet engineer, you talked about this engineer technical. I can only imagine. I mean, I'll speak for myself. Some people have heard it on the show, Peppered it here and there. Today, we're talking about technical inventions and vibrational medicine in a pure way. Um, some of this stuff was freaking weird for me, to put it mildly, without the French. It still is, right? And I'm very leading edge. I'm very gifted as I've come to learn in the type of work that I do. What's that like? I mean, at that moment, if I had told you, hey, Gail, you're creating this accident, get the money for your prototype, right? There's the disbelief. What's that journey been like for you to balance the science and the spirituality in terms of this invention that you've had to create? Because it seems like it's also made you more spiritual as a result. I mean, that's kind of what I'm picking up. I don't think I've ever spoken to you about this. I'm curious on the air. How's that been for you on whatever level you want to speak to it? Were you all, let's start there. Were
Well,
you always woo woo?
um,
By my definition, were you
no,
always
I
like
was
pulling
not.
cards and
I
all
was
that?
very left brain analytical. I thought the woo woo stuff was crazy people that needed to go see a therapist and,
Or
get
in
their
my
mind right.
case, it's airy fairy, maybe, sounds cool. Let's talk about it. And it's only, I talked about it and it was cute. Yeah. Okay. So when did that shift? When the shift?
So that shifted. I was I knew I needed to leave the Detroit area. I knew that Henry Ford and the automotive industry wasn't going to get me where I needed to be. And I always said when I was younger, I'm going to do something that's going to change the world. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know where, but this is not changing the world. I mean, they called me the mayor at the automotive industry company that I worked for because I was always hooking everybody up. And they said, no, you can't go to the motors lab and get a resistor because we're the electronics lab and you can't go. And I'm like, what? I'm just going to walk over there and get a 2 cent resistor, whatever. And so they call me the mayor. I was always trying to bring people together. But then I met this gentleman who was a leadership trainer, leadership coach, speaker, and he literally worked for NASA and was a rocket scientist and a genius. And he was a shaman. And I'm like, this was shaman, whatever, right? Silly. And he was about 18 years older than me. But I really just fell in love with, I think, the idea of escaping Detroit, getting out, and he offered me a position in his company as a project manager for an amount of money that was probably 10 times what I was making. I don't want to bring up the numbers, but it was a lot. And I thought, how can I not take this chance? And everybody that I worked with, that I supported, all the engineers and all the people that I supported were like, you can't leave here, you're going to fail. I think almost in fear of if she leaves, then she's doing all my work, right? So I don't want her to leave. So I'm going to tell her, oh, you can't leave, you're going to fail. I took the leap. I left there. I got introduced to shamanism. His mom happened to be a literature teacher, and my grammar was very bad. I would say I seen this. I had went there, and so think about a literature teacher hearing this young girl that's dating her son speaking this way. And then she says, have you ever read Ayn Rand, or have you ever read any of Robert Heinlein or Ray Bradbury? I'm like, no, I learned how to be an automotive worker. That's what I am. And she's like, no, you're gonna read Atlas Shrugged, and you're gonna read Fahrenheit, 451, is that? Yeah. And then you're gonna read Stranger in a Strange Land, and you're gonna learn this stuff. Okay, fine, So I didn't even know the right fork for the salad. I didn't know a butter knife from a steak knife, right? I just use a steak knife to put butter on my bread at home. So a lot of this stuff happened, but as I was learning the shamanism part, and he could take my headaches away, and I'm like, this is weird. Maybe there's something to this. So he says, I want to take a trip to Peru. I want to learn, or not, Peru. I want to learn how to rewire my brain. Okay, I'll go with you, but I don't like spiders, and I don't want to go into the Amazon jungle with the spiders that are as big as a paper plate. So he says, okay, I'm going to go first. Okay, you go first. I show up there a week later, and I was supposed to do ayahuasca and a bunch of other stuff. I show up a week later. He asks me for a divorce because he fell in love with the assistant tour guide. And that started a journey that I didn't understand I would go on, just exploring who I am. Why am I here in Cusco, going to Machu Picchu? I can't do the ayahuasca. The tour guide would not let me, which thank God he was smart enough, because in that place of anger, I would have had a really bad experience. And ayahuasca has never called to me again because the egg is a natural high. And people tell me, oh my gosh, I've been in the egg, and they call it an egg high. But in that moment, I watched the curandero's assistants. Everybody else was tripping out on ayahuasca, and I wasn't. And I watched him. So I know I was coherent on this. Go into the fire pit, pick up fire, a coal that is burning red, light his cigarette with it, and put it back down. I'm looking at the group. Did anybody else just freaking see this? Like, this guy just picked up fire. Anything is possible. Anything. Everybody else was seeing pink elephants. I didn't see anything, but I saw this guy pick up fire, and that shifted everything for me at 28 or 29 years old, and realized that anything is possible. We are magical freaking beings that can do anything.
So it's fascinating, right? Because it takes us being thrust into these extreme ends to witness the subtle realms and the extraordinary things. So really fascinating, because if you don't know, I mean, if you're here to birth something new, Buckminster Fuller, and even before that, I think Socrates had similar quotes that to create the new, you can't fight the old. So it's fascinating that you even came from the old industrial model of Henry Ford and the assembly line, which brought in the industrial age, let's say, because where we're headed, if you're going to create the new earth, we can't have. So part of the dilemma, as you're already unpacking, of this work, of being a way shore, of inventing or founding something, whether it's an idea, an institute, a technology, in my instance, as in a curriculum, in your instance, an actual physical technology or a tool, it seems to be we're figuring it out as we go. There is a inevitability of you can't use the old ways, so the new ways are being created as we create them. So I love how you brought that out and brought out so eloquently the extreme nature of sometimes that's what it takes to wake us up, because I mean when Jesus said it, and these miracles and more ye all shall do. I personally have done, I mean, then if you were to really say what I do for a living, it's miracle healing. I mean, essentially, what we're dancing around, we call it vibrational medicine, so it's more widely acceptable. It's literally ancient mystics, modern shamans. It's fascinating that you brought up the NASA person. Most people, I mean, you know this by now, I'm sure. If you didn't, even everybody gets the benefit. Jack Parsons, famous occultist, a person that did black magic. Not the savory, lovey-dovey kind, let's go into all these wild places. is one of the founders of Jet Propulsion Laboratories, is one of the co-creative geniuses behind NASA, and NASA pulled a lot of occult stuff. So I find what we're talking about, and part of the intention here is to normalize and to allow us, and I love how you worded it, to see what's possible. And it's only impossible until we see it's not, and then it becomes possible, which is probably what Jesus meant when he said, "In these miracles and more." We're stretching ourselves, the proverbial Overton window, as they call it. At what point were you a believer? At what point did you go, all right, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go fringe? This, I mean, the guy picked up a cigarette and you lit it. You weren't, I don't feel, I felt like you converted. You didn't convert to who you are now. What was the next like moment? You're like, holy unicorn shitballs, what's happening? And there must be more to everything we talk about on this show. The hidden, more and more I'm saying this way, the hidden dimensions of reality, the subtle dimensions, as Marsha puts it on the last episode this season, which you all will see an episode or two from now, this below the surface. I love how you were like, well, there must be something here. What point did you start using it? Obviously, it goes back to our conversation about the invention, which we'll get back to. I don't want to start talking about synthetic and organic stuff. What point was the final nail in the coffin, proverbially, for you to say, you know what, spiritual and science, left and right hemisphere, holistic, the unseen and the material? What was that shift for you to go balls in, all in, whatever you want to call it?
I think it was a little girl client that came into the center and was doing some sessions, and she had an illness, that's medically, I don't believe the body knows disease by name, but when we have an imbalance, then we name these diseases. And after a session, and kids heal so fast because they only know love. And same with animals, or our animal companions. I don't call them pets, but our animal companions. They only know love. And so they heal so fast. And so the little girl came in and she was afraid. So she didn't want the doors closed. And then I was talking to her mom. We were whispering to each other while the little girl was in session. And she said, "Can you please close the doors? Because the white guy is working on my head." Now, you can't make this stuff up, but kids, they don't have the filter. They're not going to lie about what they see or they feel or they hear. And I thought, the white guy, it was this white light energy. She called it a guy. She said, quote unquote, the white guy's working on my
Oh,
head.
those
So
white
some,
guys.
yeah, the light beings. I've heard kids say that there were blue beings, purple beings, real tall, lanky kind of beings. I believe the egg is a galactic technology that came from another star system. And more podcasts now where they're talking about ETs and going to the ATs, and there's egg shaped healing chambers that they use. They depict them the way that they see them, the way that their perception is, and they depict them usually as a vertical egg where they go inside. The harmonic egg is horizontal because I want people to recline inside there and not just sit in a seated position. And so the kids, I think, are what really made me
Hmm.
believe what is possible, because the children, right?
Well, they're unjaded, as they say, and and in the mystical traditions, and or even psychologically, I think there's this understanding that the way we develop, we then shut these pathways down, these extrasensory pathways that everybody has. So we're now touching upon this notion of understanding these subtle levels of energy, the energetic dimensions, the hidden dimensions around us. And I love this because yes, children oftentimes we have it as kids. Everybody's free willing and imaginary friends. There's a beautiful movie in Hollywood made about that that was fairly clear-ish energy. And I love this because you talked about it already over this last hour together, because you were talking about it early on where you're alluding and peppering in how other technologies may not be as pristine, and it's raising the bar. We're not judging anybody or anything. It's saying, how can we bring more energetic alignment, more integrity, more purity? That's why I call you an energetic purist into the space. You talked about salt, float tanks earlier, if memory serves me correct, and all this. So it took the untapered, unjaded, the untraumatized, unfiltered childlike wonder of an actual biological child to show you. Have you seen anything in the egg? I only saw it once. I used your device 3 times over the course of 5 months in 2020. The last one, funny enough, Debbie played Egyptian music. Go figure. And so I don't remember if it was the first or second time I saw a draconian being, which makes sense given what we've talked about off air. So and I still couldn't say human Haas believed it. Only maybe the last 3 or 4 years that I've gotten even deeper into this work with clients that I'm like, oh, that must have been this, back to connecting the dots in hindsight that we've talked about too. Have you ever seen anything with your own eyes? Because I'm kind of peppering two questions in at once, because we're now also back to this disbelief, doubt, the internal, external resistances plus the extremes that you were thrust into as a creator without any spiritual beliefs originally, right? You kind of brought about. Did you ever see anything in it? Have you ever seen it with your own eyes?
Um, I have seen myself as a little atom in there bouncing around. And as soon as I identified what I thought it went away. So I always tell people be the observer. It's best to be the observer than to say that was a waterfall, that was an atom, that was this or that. Be the observer, and you're going to get much more out of it. But I'm an intellect type person that lives in my analytical mind, and I have to identify with everything, and I have to say that's what that is. And I'm really working on not doing that and just staying at
It's
the
a
higher
dance.
level and observing, right? So I've seen that. The other thing that I was so scared, what happened to me was another part of my soul was integrating. And I looked over and saw myself with myself, and it hit
That's
my hips,
that's trippy.
and it was still leaned forward. And I flew open the doors and I came out. I had a shamanic practitioner working with me, and she goes, "What just happened? What's going on with you?" And I said, "I'm scared. I don't know what happened." And she said, "Oh my God." She's like, "It's not completed. You didn't integrate. Let me help you. But
Mm.
you have to let this integrate." So this has never been told to me from anyone else that's been in the egg, but I integrated another soul part. And as that happened,
Mm.
more knowledge came through from that soul being came integrating into this human bodysuit. And then all of a sudden I had a whole different aspect on life. More ideas were coming, more things were happening. It was just a really beautiful experience. But I didn't know what was happening. I did get scared because when I looked over and saw myself, I freaked out, flung the door open, and
Oh
came
yeah. I
out.
mean, it's still I've people have seen beings. My shaman teacher saw Jesus after working on me in 2017, cried the next time she saw me, and she was like, thank you. And I'm like sitting there going, what? I still, even last night, I shared with you before we recorded, had a very terrorizing experience, a very inorganic entity, let's call it, modern times we call it a psychic attack. I still have those moments where the human brain, that's why I brought that question up. Let's get into this because, you've talked about the egg in so many indirect ways. So it's called the Harmonic Egg. And I agree with you having experienced it. It's a very multidimensional device, which is why you're on today, because you had to allow yourself, all the things we've already unpacked today, how to allow yourself to be cooked through life's experiences, do the inner healing, do the trauma work, be vulnerable about it, be willing to also practice what you preach, all sorts of stuff that's led to this alignment and purity. Putting it concisely, and I agree with you, it is an interdimensional thing because, like you mentioned, we're starting to grasp what these ancient mystics and spiritual scientists said. Modern science is and the age we're in, it's becoming holistically understood. What is the egg? If you were to take us into a holistic conversation, and then we'll dovetail it into organic versus synthetic technologies, this notion that we've already peppered in so much to actually bring it in the conversation more directly, which is your egg. We've talked about your teacher. We've talked about the pristine nature, your experience with not so savory technologies. Your egg, I would say, is an organic technology. You've already spoken to it. It's found in other places. You see it universally. There's signs that it's, and we'll get into that. First, start with what is the egg? Break it down as much as you choose to, and then let's riff into how do we know it's organic? How do we know it's what I call synthetic? And let's start to educate the audience more on something that I know we're both very passionate about and is an intersect of our missions, which is there's so much diluted stuff out there. There's so much false light technology, something we talked about with Wolfgang on last season. There's so much false guides. There's so much in the immaterial, let alone now with these technologies. And we can maybe talk about my experience, which I've shared with you on a sound bed. So let's go there. What is the egg? What does it entail? And how do you know it's organic? And then we'll riff into the synthetic stuff.
Oh, so it is a sacred geometric sound and light chamber that I believe came from the ancients. I believe that the sarcophagus chamber, and I think in Egypt they healed with the sunlight through the pyramids, and there was a lot of light and sound healing. The Aborigines used the didgeridoo to heal bones. The Native Americans or the indigenous people use a lot of drumming and flute. So I think that this is an ancient technology that now we need. We're vibrational beings of light. Why aren't we healing with sound and light? That's my big thing. So we need to be healing with sound and light. And after, medical research and scientific research, doing heart rate variability tests, looking at the autonomic nervous system, and knowing that when the body's in balance, it can heal naturally. When the autonomic nervous system is in balance, the body can heal naturally. We know when we cut ourselves, it's going to scab over and heal. We know when we break a bone, we might have to get it set by the doctor, but it's going to heal. But then we've been hoodwinked into believing you can't heal from the big C or, chronic illnesses or stage 4 diseases. And I want people to have hope. So I created the egg to have hope that people will trust their body. They'll listen to their body. They'll know their body can heal when it's in the right environment, when they can quiet their mind and sit in meditation. That's when you get these messages that are coming from your higher self or God, universe, source. So the egg is that environment that we give you to heal your inner child, to release trauma. I just had a veteran that did a session in our Florida, one of our Florida locations, and he has PTS and he was a Marine and, so many things. And he said that it was bringing up some stuff, but you can look at it from a different place. You know what happened to you, you saw it, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't like paralyze you. So when I created the music for the egg, I wanted to have music that wasn't synthetic, that wasn't just, if you were to have a synthetic bird sound, how do you know as a human being when that bird's going to take a pause? The bird's chirping away, chirping away. In the silence is where the healing happens. So when that bird pauses, and I think flowers even open in the morning when they hear the birds chirping because they know, oh, okay, the birds are telling me I can open my beautiful flower. So I take offense because I'm kind of a perfectionist and I'm a Scorpio and a high D. When people say, oh, here's all the synthesized bird sounds and synthesized water sounds, how do you know when that wave's going to hit and shh? So the nature sounds that we use, which heal the DNA, we know that because when we're out in nature, we can heal our DNA. They're natural sounds from the Pacific Ocean, from, other places where people were, where there's water sounds. Where there's bird sounds. And so that's what I tried to focus the music on. As we grow as a species of humans, our vibration's going up. Yeah, I love the solfeggio suite of, 396, 432, 528. But what if we are vibrating at 800 hertz right now? You and I are vibrating. I'm vibrating now just talking to you and being on this podcast. Why would I go and put myself on 528 hertz for the frequency of love and to heal the DNA when I'm at 800, 900 hertz right now, co-creating with you?
Theoretically, it wouldn't even
So
have
I
an impact on you
studied,
vibrationally. So theoretically,
no,
yeah, it'd
it
be
might even just
nullified
bring
by
you
your
down.
overarching tone anyhow. So keep going. Yeah.
Right. So I started studying a book called Sounding the Inner Landscape by Kay Gardner. I think she was ahead of her
Oh,
time.
yeah, that's right.
Her book is even out of print. I don't think her family even really realized what she had. I think probably when she died, they're like, oh, she was just this crazy person. And, we don't know what she did.
Let's
But
pause there because
literally,
I would say that she say her name one more time in honor of that's a
Kay Gardner.
legacy. One more
Kay
time, sir.
Gardner.
Kay Gardner.
Yeah, Kay Gardner.
I would say she's a new earth leader ahead of her time where we weren't ripe as a collective. And you even said it, they thought she was crazy. All stuff we've danced around and talked somewhat directly and indirectly about from your personal experience, the paranormal stuff, the disbelief, society, science is catching up. So, anyways, back to what you were saying. It's fascinating because I would say there's quite a few of them, right? Tesla is somebody who's appreciated and even more so now, who's a good example of the very essence of today's episode is I am a receiver receiving from a non-local intelligence, more or less what Tesla said. So back to what you were saying with Gardner's research that you found.
Yes, because I also brought in Edgar Cayce to the consciousness of the egg, Royal Rife, and Wilhelm Reich with the Oregon box frequencies, and then the bringing together sound and light in a resonant chamber was an Edgar
So
Cayce
you
consciousness.
fused, it sounds like, the latest and some not so latest with the latest of the light technologies, the sound technologies, all the cutting edge of vibrational medicine. Because you mentioned Rife, Casey, and then who's the third one other than Gardner? There was one other name you
Wilhelm
mentioned.
Reich.
Oh,
Wilhelm Reich.
right. I
So
said right. Yeah, okay.
Oregon box, yeah.
And the Oregon Sciences guy. Yeah. So you brought all this together. So it's the design of the egg, the sounds going into the egg, the lights of the egg. So the harmonics, the lights, the photons, phonons, vibration. It sounds like it's a cornucopia, and that's what you got. Is that all the elements, which is what you were talking about earlier, the shapes, the hexagon? It sounds like that's back to that invention process. As you focused, as you paid attention to the signs, you took action, flow kept going, pure intention with focus. It sounds like boom, 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 boom. All these advanced things started to piece together. Is that a good encapsulation of how it finally birthed into this? Here's the harmonic egg.
Yes, and a lot of surprises too, because now I test. There's a subwoofer that creates a sonic massage for you in the egg, but yet when I take my tri-field EMF meter, there's no EMFs in there. So how did I create an Oregon or a Faraday cage inside this egg when outside of the egg there's clearly EMFs? So we don't use any Bluetooth or Wi-Fi technology. Everything is analog. We plug it in, wired. But I want to go back to the waveforms of the instruments. So what Kay Gardner taught me in this book was that waveforms of instruments, I think, are more powerful than hertz frequencies.
Mm,
So you can take the waveform of the flute, which is a simple waveform, and I'm finding that it affects the liver.
mm,
So you can actually work on that. Um, each different waveform will affect a different chakra to help to heal the chakras. So then we take the waveforms of the instruments and the colors of the light and combine that together in these protocols that we've created. I mean, I'll say we because it's we in my galactic family, but that the protocols on the 3D Earth plane, it's my training manual. But you know, it just sounds funny to just give myself all the credit. And you know, created these protocols where everybody that has an intention, we can say, okay, we're going to use this piece of music because it has drumming and flute. We're going to use this piece of music because it has guitar and piano. And we know that these waveforms of instruments are going to really help you to manifest that intention.
It seems like the undercurrent of something I always say, it keeps coming up in the last few minutes in what you're saying. I always say that the magic will only go as far as your belief will allow. So earlier, it's almost like that quantum physics experiment, the observer experiment, right? You see it, then it goes away. You think it, and you, atom, goes away. There's a multidimensionality to the what you're birthing through, and many people after us are going to birth through even more miraculous stuff if they choose to believe in what they're receiving. And then it sounds like back to this waveform explanation you're doing that's way above my pay grade, the technical analysis you were saying, speaking to. It sounds like that also, correct me if I'm wrong, was impacted by your observation and belief because you chose to be influenced by a way shower ahead of her time, Miss Gardner, God bless her. And that influenced you to not negate. I would say the placebo effect, our power has more influence than we realize. So I would say because you keep stretching yourself, allowing, not letting the disbelief block it, allowing, oh, I guess there's a greater reality beyond me. And the more you've been aligned with it, the more this miraculous technology birthed through. Because even what you said about your own integration, um, is it safe to say you've done this before? Is it safe to say that
Yes.
like a part of gay? I even picked up that like that part of you because you even said then I started to get more downloads right after you integrated the creepy like whoa I saw myself whoa and I. Is it fair to say you've done this before and part of this is integrating a soul's remembrance? My parlance.
That is correct. You're
Would
absolutely spot on. I had a past life regression from Norm Shealy, God rest his soul. Um, and I called him up one day just as a random call. And I said, I need to get a past life reading. And I don't need anybody telling me I was a Chinese dancer in China. I need to know, like, why am I here? What did I do before that I brought in as an ascended master here on this planet? Now, at this time, what did I do? And he said, well, there's one other guy that's better. He's in California, but I'm second best. I said, I'll take second best. So I flew to Missouri, to Springfield, Missouri, to meet with him. He said it has to be done in person. I'm driving down the highway. Missouri's weird. It has, you go 65, 55, 45, 55, 65, 45. I'm like, to hell with this. I'm just driving one speed. And I get pulled over by a cop, right? Motorcycle cop. He comes to my thing. He says, you're speeding. I go, I know. I'm just going one speed. This is halt 65, 55, 45. I don't have time for this. I'm going to see a doctor for a past life regression. He says, and so I just want to get moving on. So I tell him, give me the ticket. And he's like, no. It was almost like a reverse psychology. And he said, I'm not giving you a ticket because you're demanding the ticket. I said, just give me the ticket. I need to go. And so I heard him walking away. I'm giving 32 tickets today. I don't know why I'm not giving her a ticket. So I move on. I get to his place. We do this past life regression, and he thinks that I'm not getting it. And I keep saying to him, am I making this up? Am I just making this up? I'm seeing myself in Egypt. I'm seeing where there's my son is my teacher. My son, it was 14 years old when he created my first sound and light chamber, and he's the teacher that I have in this lifetime now. And I feel like I treat him like he was like treated me like I was his mother. Anyway, I'm getting all excited about this because it's so fun. So finally, Norm, I think, was ready to give up on me because I was too much in my head. And finally, I just started crying. And he said, finally, you got it. And it was just amazing to see how many times I've done this and created potions that people have stolen my work and the whole thing. And it made me realize why I have some of the insecurities that I have in this lifetime.
You had to heal that wound to be so aligned to dispense the technology in a pure way. And I love how you're underscoring listening and trusting your body, or you're talking about it earlier in terms of the healing is automatic. It's an axiom. A lot of this stuff happens automatic. We got to get out of our way. Dis-ease is us habitually creating it. So trusting your body, trusting your inner guidance system right there, trusting in the universe, so many levels of the trust that you brought forward, this true embodiment that we talk about in this episode with Marsha at the end of the season. And here we are, and now you're hitting the nail on the head, because it's back to, you have to be the very thing you're going to show them. And so if we have the trauma, we're not. So let's get into this notion of, oh, and then the last thing. So, and you've been bringing this forward. It's this dance I said earlier, and I'm seeing it in you and in this conversation that, and I found it in my own personal journey as a teacher and practitioner. You can't attach to the story, right? And you talked about it earlier. You can't get in your head and think, is this me? Is that the molecule me? Is that, and many layers to this. As an inventor, we can't, as a creator, we can't, get in our head. And so it's attaching and not attaching. It's being like, it very well may be true. In the work I do with clients, I say, look, this multidimensional stuff very well may be true. I personally believe it's true. I'll say it's not. And even if it's not, it'll play out in this life. And you're showing how it is. And even the healing you had to do, you had to get out of your head. So there's this dance between head and heart, between observing and then also interpreting. Right? Is this really an apparition I'm seeing in the chamber? Oh my God. Did I really get crucified for, being this being in Egypt? Like, so I love that you're bringing all these components forward in that way. Let's bring it home with the synthetic technology. And I think I may have told you this, you'll know now if I haven't. Early in my sabbatical journey, I got the opportunity to experience a sound bed. Shout out to a mutual colleague of ours that was also at the expo. And I had an ex who was also an empath go on before me, and she had been initiated by my Reiki master teacher. So she had some spiritual activation, some proclivity to understanding these hidden realms that you've come to grow into and be thrust into as a creator. She didn't say anything. Then I get on the bed. Then I literally felt scratches and saw this creepy being. And at the time, I was being trained by a Qigong instructor who was an occultist. He was in secret societies, and I shared this with him. So this is a man who conjured entities in inorganic and natural ways. And I said to him, holy shit, like this is crazy. And he said, what we're about to dive into to bring it home in terms of this care that you're highlighting so much about discernment and technologies and healing modalities. He said, humanity needs to be careful. This is, I think he even used the words, this isn't our first rodeo. I know that's my terms. He's also a similar behavioral type to me. So it was very like a soul brother teacher type. And that was a very freaky experience. I don't know if I've ever shared that with you. I may have, I may not have. Let's bring that into this discussion in terms of these technologies are not, in my interpretation, new. We've used them before. There's ancient teachings that we had Atlantis, and there's this like a recycled loop. You know, humanity's kind of quantum is looping. Let's talk about that because earlier you mentioned synthetic sounds, natural sounds. Biomimicry is a hot thing, right? If we take the source code, a copy is only as good as the original. If we take the source code, it sounds like you started to see universality when you were getting these downloads, which helped the validity maybe or the veracity, the purity, because it was almost like if you see it elsewhere, it confirms like, this is showing up in nature. This must be a natural thing. What's your, how do you want to riff on this? What's your experience with, what's your philosophy on as an inventor with synthetic? I mean, you're more in the market than I am. I'm a practitioner. I personally don't think we need to use anything right now. Your device is one of the few I've ever mentioned. And even that, no disrespect, I'm like because humanity wants crutches so much, right? It's like, I need this, I need plant medicine, I need, and we don't even know our human technology, which we're talking about so much an undercurrent of this. So where do you want to go with this? I mean, I know you have a really big professional hard on to say crassly for this topic as I do,
Yeah.
because it's so in the market now, it's flooded, all this light rays and all, and we don't know what the hell it does. It took me into an alternative dimension. And then I asked my ex, and she's like, oh, I saw it too. What did you do? And she's like, I did what our Reiki teacher, and I shunned white light, divine light at it, and told it to go away. You know, kind of like Gandalf. Thou shalt not pass. I was like, holy shit, I wish you had told me that. I freaked out, got out of the device, and ran for the hills. This is 2016
Yeah.
Haas. So talk to us about
So,
that. Yeah,
yeah, you're so right. This is such a hot topic for me, but it's so hard to talk about being not, woo woo or an airy fairy. And so I'm going to just launch into it
let's
that
go.
um, the teacher that I had, his was more of a box. And when you have 90-degree angles,
Literally a box.
entities
Yeah.
can store in there. Entities can store in there. And if
Angles,
you don't know how to clear,
angles,
yeah, if you don't know how to
entities.
clear
Correct.
as a healer, then the next person's going to pick up that entity. And that's what I don't want. I don't know. I mean, I think it's as pure as I can possibly get it with everything that I've learned. It's as pure as I can get it, from the purity of the musicians to the wood shape, and not anything that would hurt anybody. And I would hate it if I ever hurt anybody. You know that about
They
me. I
tell
would
me I'm an
never hurt
ascended being and I'm very gifted. Your technology is pretty freaking dope. I would say for this time in our collective, it's ahead of the market because of the purity
yeah.
and you're an hour and some minutes into showing why it had to birth out of such a pristine human. So it is this organic. So, anyways, I know I interrupted your flow. I wanted to attest to it because
No, and
yeah,
thank you. Thank you for that, because I'm not perfect, and I'm not a pristine human. I'm working on it. I'm still a human, and we were all, not perfect, or we wouldn't have to be here if we were. But I believe that your meditation that meditation that you have was so good about releasing false memories, releasing negative, what did you call negative guides? And I made the list, so I'm just going to read it. Non-serving soul contracts, implants, astral travel. People are doing these things, they're experimenting, and they don't know what they're picking up along the way of this astral travel, and they're listening to guides, they don't know where they're from. And these are feeding on us. And this whole thing with the med beds, we don't know what that's going to do. They're making a lot of claims on these med beds, saying they're going to heal everything from like a gunshot wound to bring you back from the dead. And I just want people to know to be careful, because this is not something to play with. This is not a toy. And even though you think it's not doing anything, oh, I'm just going into this, this plastic box with a bunch of electronics and a computer screen, and I'm going to wear some headphones. You don't know what false memories that might be giving you. You don't know what frequencies that's putting your body through. Every one of us is a different galactic being, and we have to find and be discerning on what works for us. And for me, it's the egg. I love the egg, but I'm completely biased, but it's not going to be for everybody. And I do agree with you 100%. We shouldn't need anything. We should just need us. We should rely on our bodies. We should, be what we need to be. But we're always looking for that crutch. Oh, who can heal me? Who can help me? Who can give me an idea that we go? That's why we ended up with doctors. What do I take? How much do I take? What's wrong with me? How about we say, I know what's wrong with me. Let me tune into what I need. Oh, I need some lemon balm right now. Okay, that's great. So the hospitals of the future should be an apothecary and an herbalist, and you know what you need. You're sitting in the sunshine, and it's not even called a hospital. Maybe it's just a healing center. And people can't wait to go there. I'm going to go sit in the garden. I'm going to go pick some radishes and maybe some sweet potato leaves and grab some stuff that would help your body. You can muscle check, you can just use your intuition. This is what I want for people of the future. We shouldn't be relying on anything and saying, well, I have to take this the rest of my life because, and I'm going to say it, because I'm too lazy to figure out what's going on with my own body. I'm just going to take the easy way out. You have to do the work.
Well, the tool plus the work, as we've been saying, there's a dance happening right now because as a practitioner, even you having informal conversations have confessed to being, I mean, Haas, you're pretty fringe to the work you're doing. It's scary work, the work that I'm bringing about. And I get it because here's what I see in society, right? We have the old Judeo-Christian, I came from a Muslim culture. A lot of this is like embedded in the collective programming of this is false prophecies also. There's some legitimacy there because we're seeing it now, we're speaking to it. Synthetic technology, the biblical folks and the Christian and Jewish and Muslim folks would say those are the false teachers, the false technologies, the false light. So there's some legit stuff there and some hyperbole and dogma that's old and outdated. And then on this side we have carelessness and everybody trying everything. I mean, I went to the only festival I've ever gone to, which is a yoga festival, and I had sound healers, a huge gong bath, huge, hundreds of people, and I had the TAs, the equivalent of a teacher's assistant, over there. And I couldn't believe this because much like and I appreciate you bringing up the medical community, much like our medical community, the modern scientific community, kind of throws out half of the baby with the bathwater. We need to bring a holistic understanding. They literally were standing there saying, did you see this being come out of this person? Go, there's no discussion like we're having now. It's not normalized to talk about energetic hygiene, to talk about the energetic and appreciate the energetic dimensions of this work and these technologies or what we're bringing through. So whether that is negating our gifts, which we talk about this season on a different episode, or in your case, you didn't negate your gifts. You learned to expand them, work with them more, and you birth this bad boy through and other iterations, which we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about briefly in a moment or so. So you touched on this a bit. I want to flush it out some more. This discernment word, how can you tell? So you're out there. We're hoping to invite you all to seeing that, stretch your disbelief out. There are things out there that may serve you. So let's say somebody wants to go to these novel technologies, these alternative technologies. What's ways they can gauge is it safe? And safe is relative. I love how you touched on that. Not one size fits all. We're not here to kill it, Generally speaking, what are ways? I love how you said muscle testing, so I'll highlight that, your words, right? You can listen here. Other than that, what other ways can a being be like, I shouldn't use this, or this is good for me? Either variation of that.
So I think that, talking to other people and getting their experience is one thing if you know somebody that's done it. Muscle checking, so you can look at it and just, you can do the tilt test if your body leans forward or back. But if we don't know our bodies, then how do you know what that gut feel feels like when you're just like, I feel sick to my stomach and I don't know what that is, but I don't think I should do this. I have a friend who will walk into this room with this machine and she said right away, she's almost like, her body is almost like pushing her out of the room. So she knew that she couldn't do that. It would hurt her. Things that you want to pay attention to. If you do these things, pay attention to how you feel. Are you angry? And are you an angry person? Are you fearful? And do you have this fear in you? Are you sad? So I went to a healer one time who was going through a divorce and he worked on me, was a chiropractor, and I left and I was crying. And I realized I took on his sadness. So it's very irresponsible for these healers to be working on people when they can't neutralize their emotions and they share them with you. So you're really they should be paying you instead of you paying them because you're taking on all their shit that they're putting out. Acupuncturists can flick their emotions into you. Massage therapists, machines can do this. You know, who's the creator of the machine? What energy is in there? So this isn't a time where we should be experimenting with everything because it's cool. A lot of this stuff looks really cool, but be discerning, tune into your intuition. Otherwise, you're going to end up taking, 2 to 3 weeks to heal yourself and figure out, why do I feel this way? My tell for me is when I do a technology, sometimes I'm too polite. People invite me to try their stuff, and I'm like, okay. And then I spend 2 weeks with insomnia, and I have to clear it, and I have to get rid of all the energies and kind of reset my body. So I've been more respectful now to say, listen, I am really careful about what I put, my energy field into, and I really appreciate it. It looks wonderful, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people because I don't want to ever judge. And I'm never going to tell you not to use something, because what if my opinion prevented you from doing something that would help you? Then shame on me.
It's interesting, right? Because there's this, and I appreciate you sharing all that. There's this notion of numbness that you keep talking about, or not awareness, which is probably why I keep hinting at the episode at the end of this season, which you all can see in a couple of weeks when you watch this, which literally, if you don't know yourself, if you're numb, if you haven't done any of the inner work that the first few minutes and first part of the show we're talking about, none of this is going to work. And it seems like you have to do the work to get unnumbed. These are all natural proclivities. We're all wired. We all have abilities to feel these subtle realms in society and the way we're living, all stuff we talk about on this show. It sounds like that's the precursor. A lot of the stuff is the cornerstone of this show. Then you have to actually pay attention to it. And I love the muscle testing analogy of your friend, or example of your friend, because it may be that the technology is not right at this moment. You're not right for it. Or you use the analogy of, these are energetic technologies. These are energy vibrational medicine. It may, in some instances, amplify what's in you. So if you're numb, you're not going to know if you're angry. So you won't know if it's going to amplify your anger. So that's one thing you brought out. Likewise, if you're not angry and you go to a healer who's unclear, you won't know. So a lot of the vital inner work that's necessary, whether you're a practitioner listening to this today or simply a consumer, seems like the road leads back to everybody needs to do some embodied work, some inner work, and to get clear whether they're a Gail and they're creating or not.
I love what you said, because maybe it's not now, but later. So if you say, oh, this isn't for me, you don't want to run around telling your friends, oh my God, I didn't resonate with that. What if it was going to bring up a trauma that you weren't ready to deal with yet? And that's why it wasn't for you. So, you want to just be careful about that too. So thanks for saying that, because that's another point.
Well, that's true in my work. I mean, present company included, people sometimes have to plant seeds. So I'm not even a technology. I'm dispersing a medicine in terms of the work I help people in terms of this multidimensional healing and soul level work. And it literally planting the seeds. And so I've come to learn, and I love how you added to even that, that don't attach to the belief. Because then there's a lot to this. I love the undercurrent of how you show up. It's very pristine. You have a very energetically pure approach, which is vital because in how you're speaking to it, how you birth the technology and all that. Anything else on the medical community? I know you said a small bit about it because my thesis is that and you're seeing it, UCSD, where I studied in San Diego, my sister, my cousin's wife thought I was weird to talk about this woo-woo stuff at a family dinner. Now I heard she's studying energy medicine. UCSD has incorporated it. I mean, some of my colleagues are some of the teachers. I've studied to be a physician, in case you didn't know in the audience. I don't think you knew. I think you knew that. I've told you that. So where are we headed with this? I personally see some hope, and then I'm doom and gloom because I'm like, shoot, so many people are asleep, and we kind of sometimes feel like we're one step forward, three back. Where do you see this? Because I know you spoke to, we need to have more holistic, you said almost like an apothecary vibe, if I heard you correctly. What else did you want to add to that? And then we'll bring it home with the exercise if we can.
Okay. So definitely I want to see the doctors be a little more open-minded about health and nutrition and exercise and diet. And they're just not really trained that way. So it's not their fault, but they take a Hippocratic oath. And I think they're now starting to realize that these meds are depleting people of really valuable minerals and vitamins, and they are hurting people. And they didn't mean to do that. It wasn't the intention. And so I think they're starting to, more and more of the doctors that are buying eggs are saying that they have a more holistic approach. and they're realizing the value of energy medicine, but they're not taking insurance anymore either, because the insurance companies aren't going to pay for these modalities yet. I have a ton of hope for humanity. And if I break my leg and the bone is sticking out, I'm going to the hospital and I'm going to set it, and then I'm going to heal it with the egg and energy medicine and my intention. But we still need, these types of Western medicine protocols for humanity. But I think that there needs to come together and blend and have the best of both worlds. When I was at the expo that I met you, I did a workshop on let's create the hospital of the future. And I think we just call them healing centers, and there's gardens and there's dogs and there's animal therapy, because we know how healing, a cat's purr, or just the unconditional love of a dog, of a fur baby. And so I see that. I see apothecaries, not pharmacies. I see, what else would we had so many things on the list that we co-created. The gardens, I said, a natural light, color therapy, not such a sterile environment. And I just see that there's these beautiful things coming into the future that I know is gonna, I know that they're gonna happen.
It's interesting because I feel like all yes to everything you said, and I find that it goes back to this thing that I said earlier about the technology. It's going to where the source of it is, and it's a bunch of people that don't know any better in different systems, and this is all being uprooted now in this proverbial great age because it goes back to the byproduct of a system that's outdated, that's been infiltrated. Let's say, for a lack of a better description, that has synthetic components in it, financial interest, pecuniary interest, so to speak. So I love that because I feel like it has to be both a internal and an external. It has to be a system overhaul as well as our inner system overhaul. We have to do it micro and macro, and I find that's a big part of what we've been touching upon. That you had to do it to birth it through. Um, I wanted to do the exercise. I love to round us out with a practice. You taught this because you were
Okay.
taught this, and there's a very simplicity to it. Only it's a profundity because it mirrored other techniques I teach. Before that, you told me recently, and I didn't even know this. You have a second book in development. If you have time, and I know we're going a little over. What is the second book about? Because I made it in my notes. I was like, "You got a second book? You didn't tell me you have a second book." And so here you go. How this is how humble she is, folks. She's a great saleswoman. Only she's so pure. Sometimes she forgets that she, matters. And so what's the second book about? Because I didn't even know you're doing it.
Yeah, so real quick, yeah, you're right. I do have to go, but let's do these things for your audience because I'm really excited to share it. The second book is called it's called It's Time.
Okay.
It's basically after my documentary that I did, It's Time, but it is a handbook for conscious living in chaotic times.
Hmm.
Brilliant. And there's 9 authors. Everybody that we interviewed in the documentary is interviewed in the book. And what I do is I introduce them in my voice, and then they say all the stuff that they say, which is so beautiful. And I'm learning from them every day. And then I do the challenges. So I say, this is what they said. Now, here's some challenges that you can do every day to be more conscious living, growing your own food, even if it's microgreens on your kitchen counter. There's something you can do that is going to help you. So that's the book.
It's
And then the
time.
exercise
Literally. It's
is
time. It's
time.
literally
Everybody
time.
says that now. It's
It's
time.
time, and it's time to do the exercise, and it's time is the book title. And we've been talking about inspiring and empowering you all because it's time. So many dimensions to that title. I'm glad I asked
Right.
because it's time now to
Yes,
do the
thank you.
exercise.
It's time to do the exercise. So this was taught to me by Slim Sperling's business partner, Bill Reed, rest his soul. He's passed. And I think also he was way ahead of his time, and people didn't understand his black box technologies and his teachings because he was just ahead of his time. So the exercise was to clear your energy and to take back those soul parts that people either take from you, not on purpose, sometimes yes, on purpose, or that you give away because you give away your power. So a lot of us are walking around like Swiss cheese. So the exercise goes like this. You put yourself into a rectangular type of box, and you put a gold ball in all the 4 corners of the top, a gold ball, however big you want that gold ball to be, and the four corners at the base, and you see yourself inside this clear box with 8 gold balls, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. And then you call back in all those parts, bits, and pieces that you have either willingly or unwillingly released. You spend some time with that. So I'm going to give a minute for people to call back those parts, bits, and pieces. You can pause this if you need more time, but I'm going to move on to the next part. And then you're going to send back any parts, bits, or pieces that you have taken from somebody else willingly or unwillingly. And you want to do this with love and kindness. It doesn't need to be abrupt, but very lovingly sending back those parts, bits, and pieces so that they aren't walking around like Swiss cheese and you're giving them their soul parts back. Now you can pause this if you need more time again. Then what you're going to do is you're going to look at your body from head to toe and watch it fill in those blanks, fill in those holes. And I look at it as kind of a matrix where you're just all the way down to your feet. And when you see that you're complete, take a deep breath and you can complete the exercise.
I always know it's working because I yawn. That's one of my signs or tells of energy work. And I judged you when I first heard you speak and you presented this, and because I do very advanced work. You know, we had Janet Richmond on the third season, and then you did this exercise, never judge a book by its cover, and you had all of the components of energy sciences in there. And I was like, look at this lady go. You know, you did the calling all parts back, you did the reclaiming, you did the what most energy scientists don't even know, let alone appreciate. And when you banish or you clear an energy ecosystem, you need to make sure you fill it so the old energy doesn't come right back. You have the compassion piece of giving their energy back. So whoever taught you, kudos to them and thank you for sharing that with me and the audience as a whole. And I gotta say, Gail, what I really appreciate about you is the fact that you've gone through all of this and the purity has kept you intact because you still have a lot of hope for somebody that's gone through what I would say would be lots of hopeless situations as you've spoken to over this time together. And any parting words to wrap us up before we kind of close the session for today? And thank you for sharing of yourself, including the technique we did right now and everything else that you've peppered in.
I think the only thing that we didn't cover, I'm looking at all of my notes and our notes together, is that we just need to realize that we're all magical beings and that anything is possible.
1,000,000%. It's time to realize we're magical beings and that anything is possible. And that's why it's titled It's Time. And I agree with you. I loved what you brought through and how we brought it through. And as you said, we have notes of an outline, things gel, and then sometimes we cover things, sometimes we don't. We riff in places we didn't expect. And that's what you get on the Vulnerable Power Show. Because Gail Lynn here is a vulnerable example of somebody who earned the power, who initiated it, what we call in my verbiage, who had to be activated, had to do the hard work, and showed us today all the various aspects, inner work, outer work. We didn't touch too much on the business development. We didn't get into that. Maybe we'll have her back to talk more about that. Who knows? I don't sense it'll be the last time me or you all will be hearing from Gail Lynn. So, Gail, thank you for being here. Thank you for being out there. And thank you for birthing your current egg and baby. And I'm looking forward to what else you birth through. And we trust that you all listening today, wherever you're at on the journey, whether you're an inventor, a creator, whether something is birthing through you right now or it has birthed through and you're being guided to up level it, wherever you're at on that journey, we trust you've been inspired and empowered. And as Gail said right now, you can invite in and allow in more of your magic so that more expansion and more of that proverbial heaven on earth can happen. That's how we're all going to do it. It's going to take a village. We're going to do it all together. There's not going to be one savior coming down. There's not going to be one technologist. And so we trust also that this has exposed you to new stuff, things you may not have been willing to peek into, and you use your discernment, be integritous, be intentional, and we trust that you'll also be guided to do those explorations. So outside of the guidance and inspiration we gave you on being a leader, we trust we also inspired you to take a peek into, let's say, these extraordinary hidden realms around us. So thank you to Gail. Thank you to each of you. We'll see you back here for another episode soon. Much love and blessings.